It is known by everyone who cares to know that Jesus and St. Peter used to retire to the local tavern after a hard day of ministry to break bread and drink wine together. On a certain rainy night, St. Peter turned to Jesus and grinned. "We're doing real good." "We?" asked Jesus. Peter was silent. "All right, you're doing real good," he finally said. "Me?" asked Jesus. Peter pondered a second time. "All right, God's doing real good," he finally admitted. But Jesus saw how reluctant St. Peter was to admit the source of all goodness. He laughed and hit the table with his fist. It was the laugh that got Peter. He pushed his face toward Jesus and blurted out, "Look, I was somebody before you came along. You didn't make me. I know everybody says, 'There goes the Jesus and his sidekick Peter.' Jesus cures them and Peter picks them up. But it wasn't always that way. People knew me in my own right. I was respected and looked up to. They would say, 'There goes Peter, the greatest fisherman in all of Galilee.'" "I heard that you were a good fisherman, Peter," said Jesus, who was always quick to praise. "You're right, I was, and tomorrow I'm going to prove it. We are going fishing, and you will see how the other fishermen respect me and look to my lead." "I would love to go fishing, Peter. I've never been fishing," said Jesus, who was always looking for new adventures. "But what will we do with all the fish we're going to catch?" said Jesus. "Well," Peter smiled the smile of the fox, "we'll eat a few, store the rest, wait till there is a shortage, and then put them on the market at top dollar and turn a big profit." "Oh?" said Jesus, who had that puzzled and pained look on his face that Peter often observed as if something that had never crossed his mind made a forced entry. Peter wondered how someone as obviously so intelligent as Jesus could be so slow in some matters. The next morning, at dawn, Jesus and Peter went down at the shore readying their boat. And it was just as Peter had said. When the other fishermen saw Peter, they sidled over. "Going out, Peter?" they asked. "Yeah," answered Peter, not looking up from the nets. "Mind if we come along?" "Why not?" shrugged Peter, pretending to be bothered by them. When they left, he glared over at Jesus and said, "See?" St. Peter's boat led the way, and Jesus was in the prow, hanging on tightly, for he was deeply afraid of the water. Now Peter was a scientist of a fisherman. He tasted the water, scanned the sky, peered down into the lake, pointed off to the side, and gave the word in a whisper, "Over there." "Why isn't anyone talking?" asked Jesus, in a voice much too loud for the quiet working of snaring fish. "Shh." Peter put his finger to his lips and glared at Jesus. The boats formed a wide circle around the area Peter had pointed to. "Let down the nets." Peter's voice crept over the surface of the water. "Why don't you just toss them in?" blurted out Jesus. who had hopes of learning about fishing. A second shh came from Peter. The fishermen let down their nets and then began to pull them in. But something was wrong. The muscles of their arms did not tighten under the weight of fish. The nets rose quickly. The arms of the men were slack. All they caught was water. The fishermen rowed their boats over to Peter. There was a chorus of anger. "The greatest fisherman in all of Galilee, you brought us all the way out here for nothing. We've wasted the best hours of the day, and we have nothing to show for it." As they rowed toward the shore, shouting curses over their shoulder, Jesus said nothing. Peter tried a second time. He checked the nets, scanned the sky, tasted the sea, and peered into the depths. At long last, he looked at Jesus and, pointing out into the sea, said, "Over there!" No sooner had he said, "Over there," and Jesus was at the oars, rowing mightily, the muscles of his back straining with each pull. And all day long, under the searing sun, Jesus and Peter rowed from place to place on the Sea of Galilee. And all day long, under the searing sun, they let down their nets. And all day long, under the searing sun, they hauled in their nets. And all day long, under the searing sun, they caught nothing. Evening fell, and exhausted Peter raised a tattered sail to make for shore. The weary Jesus sat in the prow, a look of anticipation on his face. It was then, as the boat glided toward shore, that it happened. All the fish in the Sea of Galilee came to the surface. They leapt on one side of the boat, and they leapt on the other side of the boat. They leapt behind the boat, and they leapt in front of the boat. They formed a cordon around the boat, escorting it toward shore in full fanfare. Then in one large mass of fish, they began to leap into the boat. They landed in the lap of the laughing Jesus. They smacked astonished Peter in the face. When the boat arrived at shore, it was brimming, creaking, sinking under the weight of the fish. All the other fishermen were waiting. They gathered around Peter and slapped him on the back. "Peter, you scoundrel, you knew where the fish were all the time and never let on." They hit him on the shoulder. "Peter, you rogue, you put us on. You are surely the greatest fisherman in all of Galilee." But Peter was uncharacteristically silent. He only said, "Give the fish to everyone. Tonight, no home in this village will go without food." After that, he said nothing. But later that evening, at the tavern with bread and wine between them, Peter looked across the table at Jesus and said, "Go away from me. I wanted the fish to be over them, not with them. I wanted the fish to rule them, not feed them. You go away from me. I am a sinful man." But Jesus smiled, not the smile of the fox, but the smile that moves the sun and the stars. and he had no intention of going away. There were other fish to catch. The grace of Jesus is active in us. By the grace of God, I am what I am, and his grace to me has not been ineffective. Those are the words St. Paul wrote. By the grace of God, I am what I am, and his grace to me has not been ineffective. You see, Jesus is active in our lives. We may not always see the results or think, well, I made a positive impact. And then doubt creeps in. Then we begin to doubt faith. Then we begin to doubt, what is all this about doing good for another? For it's one thing for us to read about Jesus and the call to do his work. It's another for us to grasp it on our own. I mean, exteriorly, we were very respectful, but interiorly, we might have some doubts or be a little dubious about it. But when we encounter a glimpse of the immensity of God, then we experience our own smallness and weakness, leading us to be timid and insecure about our faith and the call to witness to the presence of Jesus in the world. But again, we go back. By the grace of God, I am what I am. And we are reminded, do not be afraid. Take your experiences of Jesus and bring to others the same. The encounter of Jesus you have, we have, bring it to others. By the grace of God, I am what I am, and his grace to me has not been ineffective. The grace of God is active in our lives. Jesus smiled, the smile that moves the sun and the stars. And he, Jesus, had no intention of going away. There were other fish to catch. Do not be afraid, for therefore we go by the grace of God.